Hi everyone, I want to give you an updated look on the meta in Season 22. So keep in mind this is still pre-patch, this is not final, but I think we have a really good picture of what it's going to be like already, and I expect not really any huge shifts in the meta when the patch actually goes live. So keep this in mind. And also some of the builds are really new, for example the Twister Wizard, so we don't really know its full potential, we don't really know all the mechanics and how to optimize them. So this is kind of like a question mark, for example, or just in general, you know, like these ranges that I'm giving are, you know, just kind of like an estimate of my own. And I can't really pinpoint exactly if Bone Spear is going to do, let's say, 146 or 147 or maybe 148 with like, you know, 3K Paragon or something like this. So there's always like a little bit of a range, and also in the end it depends on, you know, what people are gonna play more, who's gonna push what, especially towards the top end. There's always a huge range of tiers that come out at the top end, depending on, you know, how many players push a certain build, how many players try really hard, and how well they play. So all of these just as a little disclaimer, but let's jump into it. So let's begin with the top solo pushers. So I categorize them in 3 categories. So we have the top, we have the mid-range, and we have the low end. So top we have the Necro, Crusader, Monk, Demon Hunter, all being around 145 or so on around 2.5 to 3K Paragon. And we actually have quite a lot of builds that can do that now. We have Bone Spear, we have Scythe, we have Corpse Explosion. All of these are going to be very nice on Necromancer, just in general. Necromancer is going to be very strong, also for speed farming, also in groups. And it's going to be a quite heavy Necro season here. But it's not the only class you can play. We have the Thorns Bomb on the Crusader, we have the Valor with Heaven's Fury. So both of these are really strong builds. Valor is going to be the #1 Rift Guarding killer in groups. And well, Thorns Bomb is going to be a quite interesting new way to play the Crusader. So I think that's going to be quite exciting too. Demon Hunter, we have the Hanging Arrow with God and with UE. UE is not really popular, but it is very close to God or around the same tier. So it is definitely in this category here, it's just not really played. And also we have the Monk here. Monk has Tempest Rush, which is generally not really one of the top builds if you compare classes, but we get the Shenlong's buff here with 350% extra bonus. And with the 4th cube slot you can actually use it on Tempest Rush. And this is going to make Monk pretty strong, at least during this season. Mid-range, I have the Wizard with 3 different builds, Hydra, Twister, and Frozen Orb. Theoretically, 1 or 2 of these builds could move up to the top, especially Hydra has some potential, and I think Twister also has a lot of hidden potential that might or might not come out, depending on what we find out, how we can optimize it. This is really like the big mystery here, I guess, but I think it is at least 140, and it might go even like another 5 tiers or more than that. And on the low end we have the Witch Doctor with Mundunugu and Whirlwind. Despite the buff being quite good from the season bonus for Mundunugu, you get Boost Juicer, which is very nice. It's not really one of the top builds, but it is the top build in 4-man. So once you reach high Paragon in 4-man groups, you can replace the Necro with a Spirit Barrage Witch Doctor, and that was most likely going to be used for the rank 1 pushers in the end. And here we have the Whirlwind Barb, which is, Barb in general is just very weak, and definitely the weakest class in the game by quite a margin. And well, the other builds on Barb also don't really cut it. Frenzy is another like 3 to 5 tiers behind Whirlwind. Same for Leapquake, maybe 5 to 7 tiers behind. So just in general, Barb is not really looking great, but it is definitely quite a casual friendly build. So Whirlwind Barb always goes. And other than that, for casual friendliness, I also rank them here a bit, depending on you know, how well you can just solo farm with them, how well you can set them up, how hard they are to play. So typically these are like all quite low effort builds. And first of all, you have the God, you have the Whirlwind, you have Tempest Rush. All these are like these channeled movement builds. And then we have the Thorns Bomb Crusader, which is going to be quite nice, quite easy to play too. And finally, I believe Twister is going to be a quite casual friendly build too. It's not really super great for speed farming, but it is, you know, quite low effort in the sense that you stand still, you channel, and you have very high damage once you stack it up a little bit. So this is why I put them here. Next up we have speed farming. So here for solo speed farming, I also ranked the classes roughly, but keep in mind that especially here with multiple builds. Not all of these are exactly the same, but you can use them kind of like to the same level. So Bone Spear is probably the top one. We have Tempest Rush being quite good, and then like somewhere in between you have Corpse Explosion with Inarios and Rats, but Rats are quite difficult to play in solo, so I wouldn't really recommend this, but you can do it. Then we have the Demon Hunter with God, so I guess all of these are like around 105 plus, if at Paragon 1k, low gems, no augments. And also Hydra is pretty good, but a bit slower. You can easily go like 105 with this, with the Death Wish at least, and even without Death Wish you can do hundreds or so at least, so it's quite nice. Witch Doctor with Spirit Barrage is a bit of like a special case here. It is very strong for this, but also requires really good gameplay. So you need to understand the build fully to really optimize the clear speed here. And it's also a bit slower than the other builds, but it can go higher than the other builds. So with Witch Doctor you can maybe do like, for example, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 110s instead of these really fast 2-minute 100s or 105s. So this is just because of the build. It's slow paced, but it has quite some power behind it. And here's Crusader. Fist of the Heavens is really nice for super fast blasting, like hundreds or so, even up to 105 I'd say on low end. And Heaven's Fury is the build that you want to go with when you go a bit higher. So when you go like 110, 115, you can blast those tiers in like 5 to 6 minutes or so quite easily. So kind of like the same case as the Witch Doctor here. And finally, Barb with Whirlwind and Frenzy. Frenzy is actually better than Whirlwind in my opinion. So this is quite nice. You also get a nice bonus from the seasonal theme. And well, Whirlwind is just not really cutting it anymore these days compared to the other classes. Performance speeds, the absolute top meta is going to be Rats. So they're going to go 120 quite easily once you set this up properly. And then even up to 125. Even I expect like super top end on the season end, 130 Rats in like 2 minutes. It's going to be ridiculous because the buff is insane from the 4th cube slot. Just in general, Necromancer gains a lot here, and this meta is going to blast. Next we have the Bone Spear with triple support. So this is also a pretty good alternative, and it's new. I expect actually quite some people to play this. We have Bone Spear as the Hedwig's Gift set. So probably people are gonna just jump into this, and maybe when they're sick of Rats they're gonna play this. It's not very far behind. And again we have the God Speeds, which came up in season 21 already. So this is probably gonna be quite popular too here, I believe. Just in case you're not aware, the Rat setup is 2 Rats, Necros with Skeleton Mages, then a Z-Neck and a Z-Barb. For Bone Spear triple support you have the Z-Monk, Z-Barb, ZDH, and potentially also Z-Neck. You can replace them a little bit. And on God you have God, CDH, Z-Barb. For 2-man and 3-man speeds, I would put here the Rats again with only 1 Rat, for example, if you do a 3-man, or just the Z-Neck and the Rat in 2-man. So here I numbered them by kind of like the order of priority. So you need the Rat, of course, then you need the Z-Neck and then the Barb. So same for the Bone Spear, you need the Bone Spear, and then CDH is probably the best support for it, or the Z-Barb, you can probably replace them too. Or with God, you can go God, CDH, Z-Barb, or another God with a ZDH, for example, so you can just run 3 DHs. So there's some stuff like this. Usually you can swap it around a little bit, and generally farming in 3-man is also okay. Typically you go like maybe 2 tiers lower or so, maybe 3 tiers lower, and you can do the same speed, you can do like the same smoothness. But of course, losing like 3 tiers is like 15% efficiency loss. So you don't really want to do that. So typically you always want to go for 4-man, but it's quite possible here. Some other alternatives I just listed. Tempest Rush could be used, maybe Heaven's Fury could be used, Hydra and Corpse Explosion. Keep in mind again, like this is like a rather slow paced build. Could also put Mundunugu here, I guess, which is not bad. So with Eking Fury, for example, you can probably go quite fast here and do some nice explosions. But yeah, this is just some off-meta stuff here that I wanted to mention. For T16, I ranked all classes here roughly by the top performance. So the uncontested champion is Wave of Light. Tempest Rush is also, I guess, like top 5, so I just put it here too. Demon Hunter is probably the next best with God and Multishot, both being top tier builds, really fast builds, and they screen clear quite easily. Witch Doctor Spirit Barrage is very nice. You can get lots of movement speed while the Mundunugu clears everything for you. Next we have, it's kind of like a toss-up, I guess, between those 3 classes here. So Rat, Auto Lancer, Outlands only if you're actually strong enough for this, but it can work pretty well. Crusader Fist of the Heavens is very good. You just ride around, you one-shot stuff with Fist of the Heavens, it's really nice. And then you have the Barb with Whirlwind and Frenzy again. And theoretically, once, you know, this shifts a little bit, once you reach like higher levels, because on some builds you can like slot in a bit more movement speed and a bit more utility stuff instead of DPS. So this is just like kind of like a low end ranking here. And then for example, Whirlwind Barb could be optimized with like more movement speed from some like the Vortex arm guards, for example, stuff like this that you can't really include in some of the other builds. And this could move up a little bit. And then we have the Wizard. Hydra and Veers are the top builds for T16 farming for Wizard. But, well, you need the Ether Walker. You're just in general, you're like tied to the teleport. You don't really have crazy movement speed. So it's like the lowest here on the list. But keep in mind, all of these builds are still really good T16 builds. So you can do like, you know, your typical 2, maybe 3 minute runs in T16. In some cases even faster, like 1 minute when you get a good rift, or you know, also for bounties. They can go quite fast even with a Hydra Wizard. But it's not really like the build you should play if you're farming thousands of bounties in the season. Now for the group push. We have the 4-man push. So I believe the early meta is going to be Bone Spear plus Valor. And we have the Spirit Barrage and the Valor as the endgame meta. The reason why this changes here is that well, with Bone Spear, it's a little bit difficult to finish off the elites. Usually you can do like 1 or 2 really crazy shots and blast all the trash quite easily, but you can already do this on quite low end. So this is why it's nice, and in the good rifts you're gonna reach the Rift Guardian quite consistently. But with Spirit Barrage, you can actually one-shot elites, and this mostly happens when you have like, you know, a higher setup, a higher Paragon setup, and then you're just gonna blast. So I believe for like the end game clears, you know, like 4 or 5 minute 150s, we're gonna see the Witch Doctor instead of the Bone Spear. Other options are also the Scythe, same as the Season 21. It's very strong. It's basically the same strength as before. We have Corpse Explosion, which is quite a bit better than before now because of the cube. And we have theoretically the God set as well, or some other stuff like UE Hanging Arrow, Hydra, Twister. Twister is almost unplayable because of the lags, but maybe something will change about this. I believe the damage potential is definitely extremely high on Twister. You can even add a Frozen Orb here, theoretically. And all of these setups here for the Wizard are with the reverse Archon playstyle with LOD. So you can do devastating damage with all of these builds if you have a party, you know, setting everything up for you, and you come out of your Archon and then you blast for like 4 seconds or 8 seconds and everything dies. So that's kind of the idea here. Probably not really usable for the rank 1 pushes, but it might be another alternative if you want to try. For 3-man push, I would suggest the Bone Spear, Z-Barb, Z-Monk. Theoretically, you can also go Bone Spear and Valor and like a Z-Barb, but I think this is probably fine because Bone Spear is okay to actually kill a boss. So this might also be something for 4-man, just go Bone Spear and triple support. We did that on the PTR, and you just have the Bone Spear kill the boss. It's not terrible, and definitely an option here. And for another option here would be the Witch Doctor again with Valor as the Rift Guardian killer, and then a Z-Barb. So that can work pretty well too. Theoretically, there's some other stuff. We could probably try the Corpse Explosion again. Theoretically, you can try Scythe and Valor. So there is some options here, and all of these will also work kind of like in 4-man. You just drop one of the supports. And in 2-man, we also see like the same builds again. Bone Spear and Z-Barb is probably going to be the best one here. Valor and Z-Barb might be another option, so you're just taking the Rift Guardian killer to also clear the trash for you. But yeah, Valor is pretty strong, and when you have large pulls, you can probably make enough progress and just blast the boss down. Again, Corpse Explosion, and maybe Gods and Z-Barb, but I think this is going to be quite tough to actually push to 150 like this. But yeah, these are, I think Bone Spear is probably the best one here. For the RGKs, we have those here, so I estimated the kill times roughly on like a typical single target boss, and this is my list here. So keep in mind this is, you know, not really accurate, so in some cases might be a bit more, so I have like quite high ranges, but it's somewhere along those lines. So number 1 is Bone Spirit, but on the other hand it's also very inconsistent, very difficult to do. Basically you have to stack some Stricken and run away very far, then cast your Land of the Dead and Bone Spirits, and they will fly for half a minute in one straight line towards the boss and one-shot it. So this is not really a setup that I would recommend, especially later on when you have more Paragons. Valor is just gonna catch up more and more towards the Bone Spirit, so you should probably ignore the Bone Spirit unless you really like that setup and you have a group that is willing to lose a few rifts because you mess up or because the boss has ads or something like this. Valor can kill any boss and it's not far behind. Then we have Invoker, which is actually quite good. So we tried this out on the PTR, the 6-piece Invoker. Pretty nice, especially non-season is going to be good, but also on season it has quite some potential to be probably the third best here. Maybe I'm a bit too optimistic, but I think somewhere along those lines it's going to be usable. Good part about Invoker is it can strike Stricker on every single boss, doesn't matter if there's ads or not, because you only have a single target ability. So very boring, but very consistent. Bone Spear is another option that I wouldn't really run as a rift guarding killer, but as I mentioned above, like as a triple support setup when you take the Stricken, definitely doable here, and also not really bad. Frenzy Barb is quite far behind, also quite simple, just left click the boss to death, maybe time your Valor the Berserker a bit. Tempest Rush is actually there as a rift guarding killer, and this is something that I want to try out at some point. So I have a setup for this, and with Shenlongs and you have 100% crit chance on a boss, there is quite some neat stuff that you can do with this, and I believe this could be quite fun to see a Monk rift guarding killer here. And lastly, the Impale Demon Hunter, yeah, nothing really special. Also, yeah, just quite far behind, but it works if you want to try it. And lastly, for the leveling meta, I would just not recommend rifts at all. I would just go Cursed Chest if you're in a group on like at least Torment 2 to Torment 6. And this is going to be the fastest meta probably, so 45 minutes are the record times for 4-man here. Maybe if you're a bit slower, like 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and that should be about it. So typically you go some certain Cursed Chest bounties, and Temple of the Firstborn also has some Cursed Chests that you can farm, and you usually get lots of XP there. And we have the Shadow Clones in Season 22 from the season theme, so this is pretty nice. And it can be, I think, down to 1 hour or so in solo. So you don't really need a lot of luck for this. You just go into Torment 6, you find the shrines, we have certain locations for this. I also made some videos about this already that you can check out. And I think it's going to be also a pretty good strategy to reach level 70, and you might even get some nice legendary drops on the way there. Yeah, so this is about it for the meta outlook so far. We're gonna have more finalized full tier list of everything very soon, but I think this should give you all the information you need for now, and you can start making your own plans, your own decisions about what to play. So I hope you enjoyed this overview here. And if there's anything that I missed, anything you have questions about, as I said, it's really hard to cover everything. So, some builds, they work really well when you have, when you farm like at a certain speed. Some builds work really well when you play it very well, when you have a certain, item setup, certain cooldown setup. I don't know, there's it's very hard to just give the broad picture here. But I tried to do my best, and I think this should also show you a little bit, what the Season 22 is going to be about. So I hope you enjoyed my thoughts here. I'll see you guys next time.